Thanks, everybody. I've got 10 minutes, I believe, a little less now, so let me get through this pretty quickly. Royal Road are unapologetically exploration focused, so we generally get a little bit itchy. We get itchy feet around about PEA point. Our largest shareholder is Agnico Eagle with just under about 20-odd%, and then there's about 15 other institutions, including Mackenzie Investments, who've been with us for a long while, which I think is Canada's largest mutual fund, and a few others. And so, they're keeping us very much focused on tier one assets, so significant copper and gold assets. I still thinking, I know in Nicaragua we're definitely the largest title holders there, possibly still in Colombia. We've reduced our holding there a little bit, but we really do the traditional old model, trying to find new ore deposits. So everything we're going to be talking about from here on in is a discovery. So we're drilling currently 3 projects, Caribe and Guinta as indicated there, but also one other called Los Andes. And then there's some sort of pretty innovative, we think at least, environmental social initiatives that we're driving forward, particularly in Colombia. Okay, so everything we do, and so I'll go through some of these partners down the bottom here anyways of that little figure. Everything we do in Nicaragua is a joint venture with a Colombian company called Mineros. They're actually just about to list, I believe, if not tomorrow, then next week. And so it's a strategic alliance with those guys. In Colombia, we staked our own ground back in 2015. We sort of banked on a positive outcome of the peace process. I'll talk a little bit about how we sort of try to align ourselves with the aspirations of the well-meaning components of the Colombian political landscape and also the international community in a second. But in 2019, we then bought AngloGold Ashanti's exploration assets through a process that they ran with RBC here in London, in fact. And what they decided to do was focus on their development assets and get rid of their exploration assets. Most of those assets are well developed in a geological sense, but they're in pretty tough parts of Colombia. So I'll tell you some interesting stories about that. Mineros, down the bottom. Ecomun is actually a cooperative of ex-FARC guerrillas that we exit. I think we're the only commercial agreement that these guys have. They have something with the Norwegian government as well. And so they assist us in some of the hairier parts of southern Colombia, at least in terms of intelligence, and in some cases in respect of access. We're also signatories to the British Embassy's Business and Peace Initiative, which allows us, or gives us a bit of a lever up at the sort of, the stratospheric political levels should we ever need it. One thing I want to point out is that the northern block that we have, that I'm indicating there, and the southern block, are 2 completely different environments in terms of risk. Most of you who know Colombia will be familiar with Nariño and Cauca in the south, which is very tough for anybody who's not in the business of cocaine. And the northern block is utterly different. It's a fairly normal exploration environment and is home, in fact, to around about 50 million new ounces of gold discoveries over the last 20-odd years. Okay, our value proposition is essentially, we find things, we spin them out, we either retain a royalty or direct cash sale, depending on, in fact, we'll always try and keep a royalty, depending on the size of the asset. And that's why Agnico are on the share register, and that's why we joint venture with Mineros, which are strictly a mining company. We've just, this year, consummated a transaction on a skarn that we found in northeastern Nicaragua, which is a bit too small for us. So we sold that to our partners for $22.5 million US, and we're retaining a 1.25% NSR on that. Sorry. So just, I'm just going to walk through the projects that are sort of making news for us nowadays. This one's Caribe. It's up in northeastern Nicaragua. It's a completely new discovery made by our reconnaissance geologist back in 2018, who picked up a 3.5 gram float sample. We took a rig in. We've been drilling it ever since. And I think you can see we're starting to pull together some pretty good intersections there. The most recent one was 201 meters at 1.1 grams. It sits in like an oxide volcanic breccia. We're starting to get some geometry on it. There's no exposure, so it literally sits under about up to 30 meters, in fact, of saprolite. But we are starting to figure it out. What's interesting about it is underneath it, this oxide zone where most of those holes are, we're intersecting a sulfide breccia, which is very rich in molybdenum and copper and gold. And so we think that there's some sort of intrusive source that we should perhaps be focusing on. So we've got a RAB rig going out there now. We've taken the diamond rig off. That's gridding up around underneath that 30-odd meters of laterite, saprolite, to define our intrusive target. This one we're drilling now, and this has been very exciting up until now. You'll read more about this in press releases in the next month or so. We've hit the porphyry that we've always been looking for. We're in Colombia here. It's a project called Guinta Nivarengo. We've spent quite a bit of time, so did Anglo, drilling the skarn alteration system around it, and I think we've got some pretty exciting news coming on this one. Margaritas is actually just south of that one, of Guinta, about a kilometre south, in fact. We now think it's part of the same system. We'll be drilling this next year. This is essentially a breccia, visible gold on surface. Los Andes we're drilling now. This is what you call more of a Hail Mary project. So it's a lithocap, if you're familiar with what one of those is. It's sort of a high-level alteration system. And you try to dig around underneath that to find an underlying porphyry. And so we've got a few holes going into that just now. We are intersecting oxide copper, but let's wait and see. Okay, now to the troubled south, as we like to call it, of southern Colombia. This particular project, our mine formalization projects, we pay specific attention to trying, obviously remove aspects of social tension in southern Colombia. You can imagine, I think, by looking at that outcrop, that we might have quite a few. That hand specimen, we might have quite a few illegal miners in that area, and we sure do. We essentially own the entire gold field under concession contract, and the only way around this is to formalize these guys. So we're essentially giving them small parts of our title, and that makes them whole and legal and completely liable for their own activities. And in exchange, they pay us a 3% royalty in gold, and we get the option to go in and explore to actually earn into our own ground. One of these operations is producing about 60,000 ounces a year, 2,000 illegal, informal, they like to call themselves, miners on the project. I'm not going to go through all of this because I'm running out of time, but big pipeline of projects, including one, El Molino, you can see there, which is a very high-grade sheeted vein system that just today we're flying airborne geophysics on. And there's going to be a whole lot that we're doing in Nicaragua also in this coming year. Just a few. I mean, I think we're reasonably well known amongst at least those of you who know us for our focus on ESG and sustainability. And so I could spend many slides on this, but instead what I'm going to do is focus on something that we do that I think is a little bit different. We just won an award for this in Colombia a couple of days ago, is our accelerator. And it's essentially like a community venture capital fund. So we identify products that are brutally commerciable. We invest in them, and then we spin them out. And so Chloris, and the idea is that this thing becomes self-sustaining. As an exploration company, we want to avoid spending too much exploration capital on social projects, so this will fund itself. And the most advanced actually is Chloris. We put 100 grand into that. It's 14,000 hemp CBD plants employing displaced people in southern Colombia. They've spent about $3.5 million on that now amongst 85 shareholders, and it's employing a whole bunch of ex-guerrillas and displaced people. That's the board. Raul's here with me, so our executive director, ESG, if you want to corner him on any of the social stuff. That's a capital structure. We've got $32 million Canadian in the bank, and there's our largest shareholders and some research on the website from Sprott. Thank you.